Welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. This is Chrissy Raywalk, Director of Intercollegiate Athletics at the University of Delaware. One of the things that I appreciate and enjoy most about leadership is that it is a journey, not a destination. It involves lots of different twists and turns, and you need many different types of people to go along with you on your journey in order for it to be successful. So today I invite you to start your leadership journey with this podcast. Enjoy.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive and organizational leadership. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at 1Q Leadership. Our guest today is Wesley Ellison-Stewart. Wesley is Associate Vice President for Major Giving and Development at Boston College. Greetings, Wesley. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Ty.
Yes, ma'am. Now, your background: spent time as a Senior Associate Athletics Director and Director of Development for Athletics there at Boston College. You spent some time in fundraising at University of Texas. And of course, you learned the art of fundraising at the Fundraising Academy that everyone calls University of Michigan. It seems like there are a lot of people who are well-versed in development that come out of University of Michigan for some. Now, I may be wrong about that, but I've talked to a number of different people, and they all, especially women, right, come from Michigan in terms of development and athletics.
Well, you are not wrong, Ty, and I'm especially biased since it is also my alma mater, and I am a proud Michigan alumna as well.
That's excellent. Now, I'm a Spartan, so we won't hold that against each other. So we'll just continue with the conversation as it is. Now, working in development, of course, recently you moved over to work in development for the university as opposed to just working with athletics, which is a major promotion. Congratulations on that. How long ago was that?
Thank you. It was the first week of February, so probably a month in this new role before the COVID-19 pandemic hit. So it's been a whirlwind, to say the least.
All right. Welcome to training. On the job, in the fire. Let's go. Development. Make it happen. So I wonder about this pandemic chapter of world history in terms of fundraising and development and college athletics, or even on campus in terms of university enhancement. Talk to me a little bit about that, how this has, especially when you're only a month in, so you're just going and figuring it out as it goes almost. Tell me about how this has affected everything that you know about college athletics and development and university enhancement.
Absolutely. Well, I think, first and foremost, our work as fundraisers, we are charged to build relationships with our constituents, and we define our work by being road warriors. We're out engaging with people, having one-on-one meetings, and, bringing people to campus, hosting events, making experiences. And obviously that's all been flipped on its head. And so I think, we've had to really reimagine how we do our work and how do we still maintain those relationships. And so that's forced us to think more creatively about the platforms that we use in communicating with our constituents. But also, that piece has shifted, right? Where, we're not able to travel, we're not able to engage with our donors in an in-person format. But then also, we also have people experiencing this pandemic in very different ways. And that goes across the country, right? You look at, what's going on in New York City. That's a huge alumni base for us. The way that they're managing COVID, particularly right now, is very different than perhaps central of the country. We're kind of in the thick of it. And so I think being thoughtful about the regional responses. Also, we've had to really focus on, being really empathetic. And, I tell my team, everything we do needs to come from a place of empathy. And actually, at the end of last week, we shared a great Brene Brown clip, really talking quick. If you, Google it, it's a minute just on what empathy is versus sympathy. And, how do we put ourselves in our prospects and donors' shoes, particularly those donors that may be in the at-risk population versus, donors who are financially impacted. And so I think it's been an adjustment because, we have, people that fall into all different places and are experiencing and responding to this differently. And so I think that's part of the process is not making assumptions as well, right? That everyone is impacted the same way. I know there are a lot of industries that are frankly thriving right now. think about the tech infrastructures that are set up for remote online learning, for remote business work. You think about medical supplies companies. And so how do we, navigate that and partner with our research team to prioritize those individuals? And then I think the other piece, obviously, is, our own well-being, right? So, we're being charged to do this very mission critical work for our institutions, but then we're also experiencing this. Like, we may have family members who may be impacted or losing their jobs, or you're a new parent. I'm going to speak on my own experience. I have an 8-month-old at home, and my husband also works. And so we're trying to balance, doing our work and having a infant at home. And I have team members who have kids that are in, high school, and they're trying to teach while they maintain their work. So it's all kind of evolving.
Right. Obviously, it's definitely significantly different, right? The phone call still going, text messages. Do you Zoom with donors? Like, how does that process work now during what we're going through?
That's a great. I think what's been great is, honestly, myself, my team members, I think, feel like they're even more connecting more frequently because you're getting on the phone. Also, our donors are at home too, so their work may be a little slow. They're wanting connectivity, right? They're not having those social engagements, so they've been much more. People are picking up the phone more than they ever have, and that's something I think statistically across the board. We actually launched our first kind of virtual leadership. We're calling them the Beacon Leadership Conversation Series. So actually last week we had a Zoom video call that featured our athletic director, Martin Jarman, who gave a fabulous 45-minute kind of State of the Union address, provided opportunity to do Q&A, and we had 400 people participate. And that's probably, more than we would ever have if we had done a standalone kind of typical donor event, right? And so I think that was really cool to see the connection our donors were having. And you had donors who were, on the high end, your principal level donors, all the way to, your season ticket holder who's giving, $100 a year. And I thought that was a really cool. And so we're doing kind of a series of those with different university leaders. And we actually, so we're having to, like I said, be more creative about what we do. But yes, we've been doing a lot of virtual meetings, and Zoom has become our best friend.
Yeah, it's interesting. It sounds like you have people's attention. I mean, when you put something out, they're looking, they're watching, they're listening, right? Interacting. It's actually very interesting. I guess the inverse of that, you may have mentioned this in your first answer, but they reach out to you like, hey, we're all struggling here, but I don't want to see our student athletes or our students struggling. What can I do? I imagine they engage you guys.
Yeah, and I think that's been what's really has been really positive, is to kind of also see the outpour of donors and alumni saying, how can I help? And acknowledging, the reality is that so many more of our students are going to qualify for financial aid next year. And that's going to be a huge need that we are very committed to providing financial aid for those students who qualify, and particularly the newly admitted class, right, of 2024. And so I think donors understand that's a huge priority. And then also, as I shared earlier, we have our students and student athletes who are facing, expenses and personal hardship that make, the ability to do their online courses really difficult. Some of our students, we have about 300 students who couldn't go home for extenuating reasons. And so, so we actually created Eagles for Eagles, kind of an emergency fund, essentially, that provides our president discretionary dollars to address any of these challenges that are emerging that our students need during this time. And so that we kicked off last week, and I think within a week we've raised almost $200,000. So it's been really a great sign that, again, our alumni want to help. And as you said, they're reaching out to us as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you say more students will be on financial aid because parents have lost jobs, and so the income levels have gone down significantly. Yeah, that's very interesting. I wonder, are there any directives, right, from your office, university advancement or development there that everybody is operating on in terms of athletics, in terms of everybody? And I imagine you have a hand in, and I don't know if directives is the word, but it's like, hey, here's how we are to ensure we're operating during these next couple months?
Yeah, so we have basically our associate vice president leadership team has essentially a COVID task force that meets. It was meeting daily to essentially address business continuity and how are we communicating. Our advancement community is, almost 250 people, of which the athletic advancement team is part of. So we're all in that, and so I'm part of that. And it's essentially a little bit of a day-to-day assessment, right? Because particularly in the beginning, so much changed so quickly. I mean, I remember, the second week of March, we were still operating on, we had fundraisers still traveling. And then Wednesday, it was travel, no events, nothing's happening. So we had to be really nimble. And I'd say, our directive right now, we're doing a little bit, I'll just back up. Our fiscal year ends soon, and so we've had to be really thoughtful about how do we still, close strong, but be very empathetic, right, and understanding about where our donors are, and there may be situations where we're going to have to be flexible in donor-based seating, parking, pledge payments, and so, but trying to get a realistic projection, right? Because our university depends on these fundraised dollars to operate. And we've also done a little bit of reflection on what happened in 2008. Like, for example, when I said the financial aid, we saw about a $10 million increase in financial aid after 2008. And so I think we're preparing that it's going to probably be greater. So how do we, again, going back to our fundraiser, how do we identify those people who are still in a position to make a major investment, and making sure they're aware of this priority and how much our budget has been impacted. As you know, a lot of us depend on our endowment, right? Our endowment is based on the market, and the market has been very volatile. And so that's another hit. And I think the other area that a lot of us are faced with right now too is, we spent a lot of funds to send students home and to, adjust our teaching infrastructure to online. And we did refunds, right? We refunded everyone for room and board. And so that was a huge hit we didn't prepare for. Obviously on the athletic side, losing the NCAA tournament was significant, right? Especially a program like BC, we really depend on those dollars. And I think with the new waiver, right, that's going to be a hit. We're going to have to fundraise more for scholarship on the athletic side so that we can ensure our seniors the opportunity to come back. So I guess that's, our focus has been, what are the needs that we have. We've been really focused on relationship building so that when we do get to be back on the road, we can work, we can prioritize who's ready and who's, going to be ready to have a gift conversation. So I call it just working smarter, right? You can't be everything to everyone, especially, those individuals who are managing, their kids and a job and everything. You got to figure out how you can get everything you need to get done in, maybe a half day, right, that you wouldn't have normally. So just trying to think. The other thing, I think has been tough, particularly on the athletic side, is that we, due to COVID, we had to cease all of our construction. And so capital projects have obviously been a big part of our athletics campaign, the Greater Heights campaign. And so that's been tough to shift towards the student, not that it's tough, but we had so much emphasis on capital infrastructure, and the focus is going to have to be more about scholarship moving forward.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's another one of the dilemmas that everybody probably has to deal with, right? One other thing you said was that the staff, the people who are engaging, have to be, you express the needs, but you have to be empathetic in your communication, in, I guess, asking and identifying the needs. Everybody's not well versed in being empathetic. Now, development people are definitely relationship folks, but tell me how you train that. How do you tell how is that something that you have to ensure that people know how to do as a leader in that space on campus?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, because I think there's a difference between, someone sharing with you, I lost my job, and you saying, oh, that's too bad. Like I can put myself in your shoes. How must that feel to have a family you're providing for and no longer have security and an income, and figure out what does my life look like next? And I think and I do think we as fundraisers are more equipped to do that, because that's our job, to build connection with people and to understand where they're coming from. But I think it's also incumbent of us, to be mindful of all the things happening. So when I say training my team, we're set up regionally, right? So I've had a lot more conversations with our New York team, being really mindful that they are in the thick of it. It's it's the worst situation in this country right now. How are you showing, just telling them that you're thinking of them, something that, this is Holy Week. We're a Catholic school. We have we have live streaming mass. Those are things that you can maybe share with those folks. It just says, I'm thinking of you. If there's anything we can do here at BC, I'm a resource. And so it's definitely a learned skill. And I don't think everyone's, it's not natural for everyone. But we also are really fortunate. I think we have support in our, like next week we're bringing on actually 2 of our coaches who have a counseling background, and they're going to be available. They're going to join some of our frontline fundraising meetings to be that resource. So, because a lot of us, right, we've never had to be on the end of someone saying, I lost someone, or there's an anxiety, I think I'm hearing from my team members, of what do you say if the donor tells you something really tragic? And that's and so that's what we're partnering. We're bringing in some people who have that background, and I think I would encourage other team leaders, if you have that resource, because I'm not a counselor, you're not a counselor, we're not, we don't have a social work background, and so who can you maybe partner with on campus, your school social work, or counseling services, to give you some guidance on how to have those conversations.
Yeah, that's pretty astute to have that included, I guess, in the leadership development of those folks who are on your staff. I'll ask one more question before we wrap. Your colleagues around the country who work in the area you work in, have you talked to them, and what are some of the strategies that you guys are sharing with each other in terms of trying to be successful at what you're doing? I imagine it starts with empathy, right? Obviously. But in terms of, the rest of the people around the country that that are in the positions that you're in.
Absolutely. I mean, that's kind of been my MO for everything we do, starting with that value of empathy. I think we've been really focused on our regional peers, frankly, because obviously Boston was one of the hardest hit cities, and we have a lot of universities here that, so we did a lot of benchmarking with BU, with Northeastern, Harvard, MIT. We try to follow some of their guidelines. What were they doing? Just even our Eagles for Eagles fund, those are ideas that we got from, looking at what Michigan did, looking at what some of our peers have done. And I think everyone's got to figure out, back to, what's going to fit culturally within your institution. But, one exercise that we've been doing as a leadership team is just sharing what your alma maters are sending you as an alum, right? And I think, giving us some ideas of what's working. And again, I go back to, we're all kind of in different parts of the country, which aren't nearly as, I've been really closely in touch with, like my Longhorn Foundation team. We've actually been doing weekly happy hour calls just to kind of reconnect, which has been great. And so that's just a way that we've, while it's social, but also an opportunity to kind of hear, what's going on in your world. And, I think on the athletic side, it is a little more, there's a lot more, I don't want to say fear is not the right word, but uncertainty and kind of what's next, what would the world, what would happen if we don't have, the white elephant in the room, right? About what is football going to be. And that is so, the livelihood of athletic fundraising is so dependent on that. where university fundraising, we can operate without that, right? And still ride the wave. It would be devastating across the board, but I do feel for my athletic colleagues right now, because I think that is wearing on people.
Yeah, it is. I've talked to a couple of people about it. It's definitely wearing on them, and not knowing what you're going to do. And the effects across campus, right, are huge. Well, this has been a very educational conversation for me, Wesley. I really appreciate you joining us here on the One Question Leadership podcast.
Well, it was my pleasure, and the feeling is mutual.
That was Wesley Ellison-Stewart. She's Associate Vice President for Major Giving and Development at Boston College. And of course, this is Ty Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of the One Question Leadership podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.